Well, unfortunately, it's a bit wet, but we've got to crack on with this lime mortar, so I'm going to start breaking out the rest of these joins, and then hopefully the weather's going to stay like it is now, because actually a little bit of drizzle is not too bad, and I can work my way across. So we had a little play around a couple of weeks ago, as you may have seen in that earlier video, and we managed to do a bit of a test area just to kind of run through the process and how things were going to work, and also how far a bag of mortar was going to go. There was also a whole load of great advice coming in from you guys on the last video, so I've managed to find the right tools for the job this time. So hopefully this will show you what's involved in getting a wall back to how it's meant to be, and how it's meant to behave and breathe. So stick around and let's make a start. Working up to the kind of probably the worst part of the wall. A lot of these stones, whether it's down to the cement pointing or perhaps the acidity from the coal fires that would have been in this wall, these are very, very soft. So hopefully by repointing up with the new lime, it's going to dry out slowly over the next few months. One thing we didn't really show in the last video, because it was all sped up in that time lapse, is that when we're doing the lime, once it's gone fairly hard, like leather hard they call it, rather than just brushing, it's more of a whacking or bashing to knock it back in, and that's going to like compact it a little bit to make sure that if there is any shrinkage, I guess, that it just stays packed in tight. So that's kind of what we need to do. So we've done that there. This is now a point where we can move and get a bit more packed in, and that's what starts to bring through the texture. It still probably needs a bit of a brush after that, and we can kind of tweak it. It's so slow that we can come back and work it after time. Just wrapping up the edit on this one, and realised I really didn't do an outro and didn't show the finished article, and it's probably not quite finished yet. There's always a little bit of tending to do with lime. You can't rush it, and you don't really want to rush it. You want to be wrapping it up in that hessian like you saw, keeping the wind off it, keeping the elements off it. If it's drying out too quickly, you can see that quite easily, and you want to be just misting it down a bit. This time of year, it's not ideal, but equally it's probably better than the middle of summer. So it's more of a spring to autumn type project. But whilst the scaffolding's up here, we just got to crack on, because I'm not coming up this high on tower scaffolding next year above the flat roof. It would just be a nightmare. So getting this section was just a priority. Now, I did it a couple of weeks back. We haven't had any frost, fortunately, and no hard frost or anything in the last 2 weeks. So hopefully that really kind of fragile moment of the first week or so is over, and now it's just a case of leaving that hessian up and just keeping an eye on things until the scaffolding comes down. Anyway, whilst we're talking about solid walls and breathable walls, it kind of leads me on to something that happened yesterday, which was I was a special guest / observer in a webinar on breathable walls, retrofitting insulation, air tightness, draft proofing, all the sort of stuff that all of us who live in older houses deal with all the time, because it's not so easy. You've got to do a bit more thinking when it comes to solid walls and vapor control and things like that. Anyway, it was hosted by Procter, and Procter are the people who make Roof Shield, the green stuff that we use on the roof, the membrane, and they specialise in all sorts of membranes, but this was mainly about retrofitting in older properties or solid wall properties, and some of the insulations that they do, because it's no good, and this is one of the huge reasons why we have not insulated any of our solid walls. If you stick a modern insulation, however good it is at insulating, if it's just a foil-faced membrane, foil-faced insulation boards, maybe insulated plasterboard, and you see all these quick fixes, people just smacking it against brickwork, there is so much risk there. I mean, yes, if it's a workshop, maybe a garage conversion, you might get away with it. But in your house, in your children's bedrooms, if you start doing that, and then you end up with condensation forming in the wall, the other side of the insulation, and mold building up, and there are so many risks involved there by not thinking about what you're doing. So you've got to think about vapor control, breathability through the wall, how much you insulate, because of course your stonework is going to be so much colder if you insulate and keep everything inside, all the warmth inside your house. So you could have freeze thaw type issues going on out on the outer side of the stonework, and all these things. So I learned a lot of it was quite technical. I'm going to leave a link to the YouTube episode which is formed from it. It was a live stream. Anyway, there's a whole load of stuff that you can learn there, just from the simplest of principles through to kind of the really in-depth calculations and formulas that work out specifically for your wall, and not just your type of wall, your actual wall, you know, which direction it's facing, how much moisture there might already be in the stonework, and all these sort of things, what the room is used for, all these elements that come into that calculation that then will kind of help decide on how you should insulate that wall. Insulating solid walls is probably the last remaining nugget for all of us people living in old houses that we haven't sorted. Normally, because it's the most disruptive, it's probably one of the bigger costs, and if you're going to externally insulate, it's a huge change of appearance. So most people don't, if you've got a rendered property, externally insulate, it makes sense. You might have to change your roof a little bit, or your windows, reveals and things like that, but actually it's a very non-disruptive, easy solution. Your thermal mass is all on the inside. There's a lot more pros to it, or less risk perhaps. You think about insulating with 100, 150, 200 mil of insulation on the inside walls, you're losing floor space, you're losing period features, the character of the house, you're having to redecorate internally. All these things are enough to put people off it, and only until I've started seeing some of these new solutions coming in, which are super thin, I don't know how thin, but we're talking like an inch, be a good solution for people in homes. Anyway, I'm going to leave a link to that. Hopefully it will be of help to some of you. If not, then you can skim through it and see me bumbling through a few answers nearer the end. But that's it. Next bit on the roof is going to be lead work, and if you haven't seen it over on Instagram recently, there's some real magic happening, and it's a piece of art what's going on the bay window roof at the front, the lead work, the rolls and the mop sticks and all that sort of stuff. So do head over to Instagram if you haven't seen it yet. Otherwise, stick around. This week we're going to have a couple of videos out, and one of them will be the lead work. But that's it. Thank you for watching. Any questions, stick them down below, and I'm sure the resident lime experts will be there to help. But anyway, remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.